नमस्कार दर्शक मित्रों। थिंक लाइन के आज के संस्करण में आप सबका फिर से स्वागत है। आज हम बात करेंगे डॉक्टर आदित्यन जी से, और अब से हर रविवार को हम लोग ये जियो पॉलिटिक्स दिस वीक विद डॉक्टर आदित्यन जी, वी आर गोइंग टू टॉक अबाउट इट, एंड वी आर गोइंग टू टॉक अबाउट इट फ्रॉम द इंडियन पर्सपेक्टिव, जो आपको बराबर समझ में आएगा कि हम क्यों ये बात करने जा रहे हैं आज के एपिसोड से। और आपको एक खुशखबरी भी मैं दे दूं कि मित्रों, आप लोगों के सहयोग से for 6-7 months I've been able to pull on. This is our 100th episode of Thinkline. And I plan to make you a certain appeal on the outset that please like, share and subscribe us. वो तो है ही है। साथ में भारत में जो चुनाव चल रहे हैं उसकी वजह से भारत की राष्ट्रवादी चैनलों को डाउन कर दिया गया। आपको ताज्जुब होगा मगर ये हर एक की कंप्लेंट, and we are not getting the views the way we should get and what we used to get. My request to you is, please like this video and make sure that you comment on it. अगर आप अब ये एपिसोड देखें तो डेफिनेटली कमेंट करें कि आपको ये एपिसोड कैसे लगे। हम डॉक्टर आदित्यन जी को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देते हैं, उन्होंने हमारी बात स्वीकारी। एवरी संडे वी आर गोइंग टू टॉक ऑन दिस। और जियो पॉलिटिक आजकल रियल पॉलिटिक हो रही है। It's becoming a real politic because India has decided, Bharat has decided this much and no further. We are going to reply. And this is for the first time that in the world of geopolitics, we are having a nation which is coming out in open and saying, yes, we did sell $4 billion के हमने हथियार और हथियार के पार्ट्स रशिया को बेचे हैं। इट्स अ स्ट्रेट मैसेज, आपसे जो हो पड़ता है कर लो। इट्स अ मैसेज टू whom we know. It's Uncle Sam. It's to China also. Yes, we have done that. We do a 10-year deal for Chabahar port, and we make it very, very clear to the world that we have done this. INSDC is going to run, gallop. That's what people feel. But why this messaging now? And why this aggressiveness of Bharat? And that's what we are going to talk about. Sir, शुरुआत करते हैं हम. We'll start with that, Dr. Adityan. What is this tango of Indo-Russia about?
See, in international relations, you don't have to be emotional. You don't have to be ideological. You have to be rational. So from Indian perspective, whatever makes sense for India's progress, India's growth, India's rising influence, India has to pursue that. And every country does that. Tell me which country that would not do it. So India is rightly pursuing her own national ambitions, projecting its rising confidence and assertion on the international scene. And I don't see anything wrong with it. There's a famous saying that there are no permanent enemies and there are no permanent friends. There are only permanent interests. So India is safeguarding her own interests, whether it is securing an agreement with Iran for Chabahar deep port for next 10 years to run it, because you know that 140 kilometers east is Gwadar deep port, which China is using as a naval base. And over last 75 years or so, Pakistan has not given overland rights for connectivity to either Afghanistan or Central Asia. So India needs a trade route for connectivity, whether it's from Mumbai or Kandla ports in Gujarat to Chabahar, from there, either to Afghanistan from Zaran's Delaram highway, which India constructed, or through this multinational joint project called International North-South Transport Corridor, which gives India connectivity, trade connectivity, not just to Afghanistan and Iran, but also Central Asian republics and Russia. You know that we are constrained by geography because we lost the POK in 47. And when we lost POK, we lost a part of real estate, which is called Gilgit and Baltistan. Gilgit and Baltistan have a land border with Afghanistan in a peninsula, in a panhandle called Wakhan Corridor. Now, if we had that connectivity, if we had Wakhan, Gilgit and Baltistan, we could have road connectivity. Yes, it would be difficult because that's mountainous area, very difficult terrain. But India has constructed tunnels and roads in mountains, so India has the expertise. We could have had direct access to Central Asia, which we don't have, because right now we are not controlling POL, Pak Occupied Ladakh, and the northern territories of Gilgit and Baltistan. So we have to develop our alternative routes, and that is what we are doing. The relationship with Russia is historical, much more complex, much more nuanced. And in the time of need, Russia or its former, state, the USSR, prior to its dissolution, had come to India's aid in international bodies, whether it was the United Nations Security Council or as such United Nations General Assembly, or in terms of military support, or our hardware ammunition used to come from either USSR or successor state of Russia. At some point in time, 90 to 95% of that was being outsourced for those two sources. Situation has changed now, and we are diversifying our sources, and we are building domestically. That should be the ultimate aim, that there should be zero import of your equipment and hardware and ammunitions, and one should be participating in international arms market, which India has started to do and started to export. And there's nothing wrong with this. The country that makes the largest number of export, if you look at the figures from SIPRI, is United States. So if US can do it, why can't India do it?
But then, sir, why is US irritated by that? US has been irritating Bharat for a very, very long time. और बहुत कुछ कर रहे हैं वो पिछले दरवाजे से, और उसकी वजह से मेरा दूसरा सवाल आता है, why is it that India has to hedge its bets? India keeps on hedging their bets. When they say G engine, we say saffron also. That's the way to hedge the bets, all right. And Bharat is doing its work. But then still, in the election processes, they are trying to irritate you. They forget that they also have an election this year.
Well, you know that relationship with United States is very complicated. You also know that United States had been the superpower since World War II ending, assumed the role of world hegemon, or in ordinary persons, आम आदमी की भाषा में, world's policeman. From 1991, when bipolarity ended and Soviet Union dissolved or disintegrated, US became the sole hyperpower, not superpower, sole hyperpower. And from 1991 to 2009, when the financial banking crisis incapacitated United States, US was the sole hyperpower. With that comes arrogance, and with arrogance comes behaviors which are not based on reality, irrational behaviors, which has led United States to get involved in quagmires everywhere. The best example is that it took 20 years, 4 United States presidents, and trillions of dollars, and almost several thousand US soldiers' lives for United States to hand over power to Taliban after taking it from Taliban.
मैं वहीं पर आ रहा था सर। अफगानिस्तान में इतना मार खाने के बाद रातों रात भाग गए, और फिर भी अब पाकिस्तान में जाके बैठे। मैं बड़ा
So,
बड़ा सीधा सवाल पूछता हूँ, ये भारतीयों के बहुत नजदीक है और भारतीय दिल के ये बात बहुत नजदीक है, और फिर भी यूएस आके हमारी हर एक बात के ऊपर दखलंदाजी करता है, और ऊपर से उनका एम्बेसडर लीपापोती करने की कोशिश कर रहा
देखिए, ये तो साधारण बात है। कोई भी राष्ट्र है वो दूसरे राष्ट्र के आंतरिक मामलों में दखल देता है, हस्तक्षेप करता है। ये अमेरिका से भी हो रहा है, और ये दूसरे राष्ट्रों से भी हुआ है जो महाशक्तियां हैं। तो मैं आपको नाम दिला दूंगा, क्या चीन से नहीं हुआ? चीन हर जगह अपने गुप्तचर भेजता रहता है। आपका जो व्यवसाय है उसमें से कुछ लोग,
है। न्यूज क्लिक की बात हो रही है डॉक्टर साहब, न्यूज क्लिक की बात कर रहे हैं, हम तो सीधा मुंह पे बोलते हैं।
और आप ये देखिए कि चीन की वजह से क्या नहीं हुआ। कॉपर स्टरलाइट प्लांट में एजिटेशन हुआ। बेंगलुरु में एक एडवांस चिप मैन्युफैक्चरिंग फैक्ट्री ताइवान ने लगाई थी, उसमें एजिटेशन किया गया। सीरम इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ इंडिया की जो फैक्ट्री थी पुणे में, उसमें आग लगाई गई। और जब भी कुछ ऐसा होता है तो उनके जो कठपुतलियां हैं चीन की, वो शोर मचाना शुरू कर देती हैं। अब मुझे लाने दीजिए रशिया के ऊपर या यूएसएसआर के ऊपर। तो coming back to USSR and Russia, the relationship has been very complex. And it's not that they've been our friends, but they have also interfered in our domestic affairs. And I'll give you examples. USSR and KGB used to fund Communist Party of India and Congress Party. It is written in Mitrokin archives. This is now no longer classified information.
सर यही
One,
चीज तो चाइना भी कर रहा है आजकल।
yes, so I'm trying to tell you that all these superpowers have been interfering in India, and we have allowed that to happen. So from a very long period of time, Indian nuclear scientists were dying under mysterious circumstances and disappearing. Hundreds of them died and disappeared. There's no kind of court of inquiry who was responsible for it. It's just not a coincidence. Some of our space scientists died under mysterious circumstances. So external agencies have been having a field day in India, and time has come that India is starting to become a little more assertive and trying to respond back. Uh, Other examples are there of Russian interference in India also. There was a famous 1995 Purulia arms drop, which was related to some domestic situation in West Bengal when communist people were, CPM government was persecuting Anand Marg. So Western supporters of Anand Marg dropped arms. They used a Latvian aircraft with 5 Latvian crew, one British pilot, and one Danish pilot. Okay,
Yes.
all of them were arrested. I think the British pilot tried to escape or escaped India, but 5 Latvian crews were, and the Danish guy were given life imprisonment. What happened? When Putin came to power, he made a precondition that he will not visit India and not normalize the relationship till these 5 Latvians are released. So he went to the extent because these Latvians were ethnic Russians.
Yes.
They were overnight given Russian citizenship, and President of India pardoned those 5 Latvians/ethnic Russians who were given life imprisoned for violating the air sovereignty and airspace of India and dropping arms. This is a serious issue. So I am highlighting this just to prove my point that all superpowers have interfered in India. It's not just United States. We tend to forget about other instances. And the reason I'm bringing that back is that from Indian perspective, in a multipolar world or nascently multipolar world or an oligopolar world, it does not make sense to tie your apron string to one party. India is ultimate balancer nation at this point in time because we are able to deal with all these people, all these countries at their own face value. Granted that our leverage with China is very limited, but we have worked with China in international arena on climate change, on global South issues. China is not a friendly country to India, so there are limitations there, and they keep on interfering our domestic affairs. They hold our territory. They keep on saber rattling. That situation is not with Russia or United States. But when it comes to exerting the influence, all superpowers have done that. We need to understand it, and we need to make sure from Indian perspective that does not happen at all. And for a change, India as a nation, as a rising nation, as an aspiring nation, has developed her spine.
So
We
don't
are
you think, but this everybody, you have been saying, I agree to that. Every nation, every superpower tried to, poke their nose, नाक डालने की कोशिश की. मगर don't they realize that this India is totally a different India? This India will give it back, which that colonial mindset जो भारतीय सरकारों में हुआ करता था एक जमाने में, वो अब नहीं रहा. तो भारत दो टूक शब्दों में कह देता है.
देखिए, the realization is there. It's not that the realization is not there. If you look at some of the important US think tanks and their policy experts, they have acknowledged India will never be an ally of United States. It will be a friendly partner, but they realize that because they understand the concept of India's concept of strategic independence and strategic autonomy. So they know that they have leverage to a certain extent. India is not going to become a NATO partner. Okay. India, because becoming an ally of United States means giving up your decision-making power. And I can tell you, no Indian government will do that, whether it's a BJP government, NDA government, Congress government, none of them in future, because we are on a trajectory that nobody is going to yield to any superpower, be that China, be that Russia, be that United States, be that UK, and be that Canada, which is poking its nose in India's state of Punjab. You see the results. And I think there is realization from US perspective that they cannot actually control India on a string. Okay. They can work, but old habits die hard. The foreign policy establishment in United States, which you call Department of State, has traditional Cold Warriors. And some of them are still there. They still have that Cold War mentality. You are with us or you are against us. So India was working with Soviet Union at that point in time, and that residual effect is still there. You know that India was the most sanctioned country after 1974.
Yes.
The Pokhran 1 nuclear explosion. So there are it's an evolving relationship. But in that evolution, one thing is becoming very, very clear that India is not going to become anybody's vassal state. Yes, you can have strategic partnership, and West has to realize, and I am going to paraphrase what US diplomats and US policy experts used to say earlier. In international relations, there are no zero-sum games. Because whenever India pointed out Pakistan's relationship with the United States, they will say that, yes, we have good relations with Pakistan, so we have good relations with you also. And our having good relations with you does not mean we will not have good relations with Pakistan. So time has come for India to say, yes, we have good relations with you, but we also have good relations with Russia. They are not at the cost of each other. We will have good relations with every country, including China if it behaves. China has to behave first. China has to take into sensitivity our core interests, our geopolitical interests, and not encroach on our land and vacate the adverse possession of Indian lands that they have controlled. Otherwise, India is free to assert itself in Taiwan Strait.
So now I come to when you mention Taiwan Strait. Now I'll come to the moot question.
Yeah.
What's happening here is, now suppose a Malacca Strait is choked. On one side, India has made it very, very clear to USA that we are not going to fight your war with China, which India will not do. So USA is making other arrangements, Philippines and Japan and all that, But if India chokes Malacca Strait, how difficult will it be for present-day China? That's my question. My basic question is, how difficult will it be? Because here it's in Modi 3.0, in the foreign policy, in the geopolitics, it's going to be realpolitik played. So when we talk of Gilgit-Baltistan, when we talk of POK, we know it's more than a Pakistani problem, it's a Chinese problem.
Yes.
Now they are building something, Karakoram Highway through Wakhan corridor, that also we know of. That's a general knowledge. They want to go to Central Asia, but if before that finalizes, if a situation arises here, and India blocks a Malacca comes into play, where do you think this whole thing will go? Because I am relating this statement with Russian Foreign Ministry statement on saying that US is unnecessarily interfering in Indian elections. And very next day, Narendra Bhai came out with that. Hum ghar mein ghus ke marenge. And it is also very clear, before you give an answer, let me add that also, that Bharat certainly wants that real estate piece, but minus radicalized population.
So you have brought multiple points, and I'll try to answer sequentially.
Yes.
So coming to Malacca Strait, China knows that it's a bottleneck for them. China has tried to deal with that bottleneck through various BRI projects. And as far as Karakoram Highway is concerned, that has been operational since early 60s. In fact, the CPEC is an attempt for China to get access to a warm water port, all-weather port, so that they can do their trade and all that kind of thing. So Gwadar has de facto become not just a trade port, but also Chinese naval base. So they have access, but that access is very costly because, transporting goods by land through that, and there are security concerns, so that is a major issue. China is also doing other shrewd things. So China has access to a port that it is developing in Myanmar, Kyakshu, Okay. China has got a naval port now in Cambodia, Ream Naval Base. China has developed rail lines through Myanmar, so China is trying to do that. China is working with Thailand. There's 200-old concept of Kra Canal, which Thailand has been battling with.
Yes.
Uh, it is very difficult, very costly. Recently, Thailand decided that, okay, they cannot build Kra Canal, but with an investment of 28 billion US dollars, they can have a land corridor, you
Yes.
know. So China is developing alternative trade routes so that they can deal with Malacca's choke point. It is true that India is not going to fight United States wars. So the earlier enthusiasm for Quad by US is dissipated. Hence the Squad.
Yes.
The Squad is another Quad, which is a
That's why I
security.
mentioned countries specifically, plus
Yeah.
Philippines and Japan and Australia.
So you have Squad, which involves United States, Japan, Australia, and Philippines, because India is not going to be United States deputy in Indo-Pacific. India will assert its own presence, but India will not do things at behest of United States because that impinges on our strategic autonomy. The other structure, security structure that United States has created to deal with China threat in the region is the AUKUS. And AUKUS is essentially an Anglo-Saxon alliance.
Yes.
And now there is talk about inviting even New Zealand into AUKUS. So it becomes a de facto Anglo-Saxon alliance. Uh, so other security structures are being created. What India can do about threat from China uh, and exercise its Malacca Strait choke blockade if push comes to shove. It's not going to be easy because international trade, 55% goes through that choke
True
point.
that. Yes.
So for India to do that, it would mean that we are basically holding everyone else in the world to ransom. That is important. But if push comes to shove, India will have to be ready for that. And I have said historically that in order to do that, yes, we have our Tri-Command Theater base in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, but we will need at least 6 aircraft carrier formations to be able to project power in that regard. And very recently, the defense minister has acknowledged that, yes, there's a need because China is also has a plans till 1935 to have 6 aircraft carriers.
Yes.
So that has to be taken into viewpoint. But India is also developing connectivity, as I mentioned, INTSC. But on the other hand, India is also developing IMEC,
Amen.
trade corridor. So again, you are the ultimate balancer. You have to deal with everyone. You don't have to become ideologically or emotionally tagged to one particular country. As a rising nation, as a rising power, I won't say superpower, we are not there yet, but we are a nascent, rising regional power. And we are at this point in time in international arena, the ultimate balancer. So we about hedging the bet. So we are willing to work with any country as long as our interests are common and in harmonious alignment, we'll work with you. If the interests are not in alignment, we are not going to take diktats from you. And that has been the change because in the past, previous Indian governments have taken diktats from other countries, whether that is USSR,
Or
whether
US.
that is UK in the
Or US.
past. UK, our intelligence bureau was still reporting to MI5
MI5 and MI6.
till 1956,
Yes.
or whether it is United States or Canada. That mindset is gone. That is history. Let's look at the world with current geopolitical situation and the current scenario. We are in a different world. History never ceases to be made and history is always created.
सर हम
So,
आगे चले उससे पहले एक सप्लीमेंट सवाल। सर Giorgia Meloni has invited Narendra Modi to G7 meet, and Modi said, yes, after my swearing in for Modi 3.0, yes, I will go there. Generally, it doesn't happen, sir.
yeah.
Generally, it doesn't happen. But here, they say in 100 days, there are going to be big decisions.
So I think one of the problems India had was a series of unstable coalition governments from 1989 till 2014. All the governments were coalition governments. The domestic compulsions, the demands of coalition partners, and some of these governments were unstable, lasting for 6 months or 11 months or 8 months and all that kind of thing.
मित्रों बराबर सुनना।
So that phase is over. When those coalition governments were there, the primary concern was to save the chair of the prime minister. And now that situation is not there. So current government is in power for 10 years and elections are happening with all projections. They will come back. Anything can happen in the election, so let me not be very brash, but those are the projected trends. That is number one. Number two is that India has almost become a permanent invitee to G7. And why it is happening? G7 is the Western alliance. The NATO is the military counterpart. G7 was the economic talking shop. And for a long period of time, decisions taken in G7 affected the whole world. After dissolution or disintegration of Soviet Union, for some period of time, they invited Boris Yeltsin, and there was talk of making it G8. But after a while, that trend was stopped because Russia started to assert. So they stopped inviting Russia in G7. But for last 4 or 5 years, India has been an annual invitee, irrespective of fact which country G7 meeting is there. And
Sir,
that
are you hinting at
testifies.
something? Are you hinting at something? Boris
I'm,
Yeltsin and Narendra Modi?
I am hinting that it is showing India's clout. Now, because G7 is totally a Western alliance, India will not be quote unquote a member, but India will continue to be invited as a permanent invitee because now the decision making has shifted to G20. And India is a prominent player in G20. India carries a lot of weight in G20. And compared to some other nations in G7 at this point in time, we have good relations with Italy. There was a time we did not have good relations with Italy for various reasons, including the Italian Marines who killed 2 Indian fishermen. And also Italy's stand on restructuring and reform of United Nations Security Council. Italy has been a spoiler. It's part of Pakistan-sponsored, Coffee Club or United for Consensus group. But under Giorgia Meloni, Italy is changing its tune and realizing that India means something. And that is in contrast to what Germany is doing. Okay. In European countries, France has always worked with India, has always understood India's compulsions and India's strategic needs. So you are having another major European country which is able to understand India's aspirations. And that's a good thing. The countries that are not understanding or that are refusing to behave, refusing to accept the reality are Canada, Germany, UK, and US.
Yes. Sir, now one comment on POK Gilgit Baltistan to my question, and then I'll come to the last question. We have about 10-15 minutes.
Sure.
So, POK,
Yes.
we will take back. हम घर में घुस के मारेंगे. Yeah, that Modi, Narendra Bhai was never speaking this language. He's such aggressive language. He has spoken that with everybody. Now,
So,
Rajnath Singh is very clear. That's a part of us. We'll take it. It will come and fall on our lap. That's what he says. Now, my question here is, that's the land, that's the piece of real estate that we want. But we do not want the 40 million radicalized population.
okay.
Do we have them for 20 years quarantine?
I can answer your question. First thing is that the statement about Ghar mein ghus ke marenge is not recent. It has been there for several years, till from Balakot strike time.
Hey, that is fine, but then now this is assertiveness.
No, that also showed assertiveness because, prior to Balakot strike, surgical strike, there was a surgical strike done a year ahead of that in Myanmar.
Yeah.
Okay. And that surgical strike was very effective because the militant organizations in Northeast, their bases were demolished.
They will destroy.
At that time, the GHQ came with a statement, oh, India should not make the mistake of thinking of even doing surgical strikes in Pakistan. We are not Myanmar. A very bellicose statement. And then it happened, Balakot happened. So they had egg on their face. So trying to say it, everything is not related to the current elections. India has shown the stature, the caliber, the strength, the spine to do surgical strikes when terrorists based on in a sanctuary, in a hostile country, were being used. So that is nothing new. That is number one. Number two, POK, POL, and it's not just POK, because POL also needs to be liberated from adverse occupation. And in that process, we should not forget Gilgit, Baltistan, and Chitral, the so-called northern territories. All those territories were part of the composite kingdom of Jammu and Kashmir under the Maharaja. And when the
Chitral
instrument
has Afghans also have a very, very big claim on Chitral, and they will.
Yeah. So all that territory, India has claim on it. And yes, India should get it. India will get it. There's no doubt about it. How will we deal with the situation as far as population is concerned? You can't just take land and not the people. That is number one dictum, because it will create international problems. But there are very easy ways. This population has already become highly demoralized from their 75 years of experience with Pakistani occupation and Pakistani colonization. Pakistan has been exploiting these areas as their colonies, the natural resources, the minerals, all those are being exploited. Pakistan has given free base to PLA and China in that area. There's a lot of resentment. You keep on seeing the videos in POK, POL, Gilgit, Baltistan, demanding quote unquote azadi from Pakistani colonial rule. And some of them are actually hoisting Indian flag, the tricolor, after removing the green Chand Sitara of Pakistan. So there is a lot of goodwill. Not all this population is hostile to India. Yes, there may be some elements. And in a future scenario, as and when India were to take those territories, our land under our control, there will be a way to deal with it. Okay.
That's it, Pedro.
Our constitution allows India, and if I may use a famous politician, India is a union of states.
No, sir.
Let me
No,
come
sir.
to that.
भारत एक देश है.
No, we are a nation. We are a nation, but we are not a federation.
Yes.
When the framers of the Constitution, they were trying to make a distinction between a federation and union of states with a very strong union, very strong center. That's why they use that phrase just to, clarify any doubt. We are not a federation. We don't have a federal structure. Let me be very clear to Indian polity and Indian judiciary. There is no federal structure. We are a union of states with a very strong center. Nevertheless, we are a sovereign nation. The states that constitute India are not sovereign states. The nation is the sovereign entity.
Sovereign nation.
And besides states, we have what is called union territories that are administered by center. So POK, POL, Gilgit and Baltistan would be given the status of union territories. They will be directly governed from center under the care of Ministry of Home Affairs, and a lieutenant governor will be appointed, and there will be enough security structure to sanitize and quarantine for maybe 20, 30 years before they will become either separate or part of J&K or whatever the statehood requirements are. But I'm trying to tell you what is a constitutional way of administering while sanitizing and without
अच्छा
affecting.
मित्रों, आपको जवाब मिल गया सीधा सा. Now I come to my last question, sir. My last question, we have about 8 minutes, and sir, I want this answer. So, do you think present day US, the way it is going, the way its debts are mounting, the way its college structure is getting spoiled, and UK, if they impose sanctions on India, as they have threatened, will sanction India, can they live with it? If India
So
responds, I say, yes, go ahead. India says, okay, go ahead. Can they live with it? Can they afford losing Indian markets?
let me qualify that. The nation called UK is no longer in situation to impose sanctions on India. In nominal terms, India has already displaced UK as the fifth largest economy, and India is on trajectory to become the fourth largest economy after displacing Japan in 2025. Yes. That is not my statement, that is IMF projection. And Japan knows that, whole of the world knows that. So India is on a rising trajectory. Yes, United States is still the superpower, but United States is a declining power. And whatever you attributed is showing the extent of decline. Unfortunately, the US establishment does not see it that way. I think you need to realize that the way Soviet Union disintegrated, US is not going to disintegrate like that. Let's be very clear about it. It's a huge country. It has a lot of resources. It still does not have enough people to populate the land. Natural resources, military resources, it still remains technology-wise, it still remains number one. So yes, there's a decline, but it's a relative decline. And despite the decline, it has capability for resurgence, resustain itself back. The economy, they control the dollar and all that sort of thing. So it has lot of, ability to take adversity and survive and weather every crisis. But with each crisis, there is some residual weakness that keeps on coming. And yes, their reflexive position for United States is to impose sanctions on each country, every country. If you count, they may have sanctions against more than 100 countries in the world at the same time. But these are like, this is just political rhetoric, a reflexive, knee-jerk reaction. India has survived US economic sanctions for a long period of time, uh, from 1974. Even prior to that, there were at times sanctions because the arms would not be sold to India and all that sort of thing. I don't think that one should try to swat a fly with a hammer. And in this case, the sanctions are the fly, and India should just do whatever India is doing. Because US sanctions are not going to have any impact. The reality is that right now, US is exporting arms to India. And in the last 20 years, almost $25 billion of arms have been exported from United States to India. India is becoming, quote unquote, Atmanirbhar. India has other sources where we can source. So if you have tit for tat sanctions, who would be the loser? That is the issue. And because India is able to deal with each and every country, we are able to source our needs while we are developing domestic manufacturing infrastructure, which remains the goal. And that is coming up very, very fast. If you can design and build your own aircraft carriers, if you can design and build your own nuclear powered submarines, you can do anything.
मित्रों, बहुत सीधी सी बात कर दी है. Ultimately, it all comes down to defense and your capability to defend yourself.
There is a saying, Shastrena Rakshate Rashtre Shastra Chinta Pravartate. A nation that is defended by arms is only the sanctuary for philosophical discussions. And I think my message to India's establishment is that don't be diffident. Shastrena Rakshate Rashtre Shastra Chinta Pravartate. The freedoms of expression you have are only possible when your freedom is defended by the might of the arms.
Might of the arms, and that is where, we are talking in terms of so much of naval power. 6 aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines, everything around India. And
And
भारत की ये तो
domestically
बहुत
manufactured. Domestically manufactured.
डोमेस्टिकली मैन्युफैक्चर, ये सबसे बड़ी बात है. आत्मनिर्भरता की जो बात है ना, और वो 3.0 में, मोदी के 3.0 में ये एक बहुत बड़ी बात होने जा रही है. अगले 5 साल में जब आप ये एपिसोड शायद अगर आपके हाथ में आ गया और आप देखोगे तो आपको समझ में आ गया हम लोग क्या बात कर रहे हैं. मित्रों, ये वीक का एपिसोड अगले वीक में तो जाएगा, मगर अगले वीक में बहुत सा पानी बह गया होगा. So the second episode with Dr. Adityanjee on world geopolitics will be a real politic. Real politic. How geopolitics is turning into a real politic for so many countries and on Bharat's angle. क्योंकि हम लोग इलेक्शन खत्म होने के बहुत नजदीक आ जाएंगे. ये एपिसोड आएगा आपके पास, कल 5वां फेज है, मीन्स इट्स ऑलमोस्ट ओवर. Some of the Western powers, some of the people who were creating lots of nuisance have realized the ultimate and the foregone conclusion that Modi is going to come back. मोदी वापस तो आएगा यार. अब देखना यह है कि कितने सीटों से आएगा, मजबूत होके आएगा या उसको हम ढीला कर देंगे और वो लोग मोदी जी को ढीला करेंगे. That's my message. This geopolitics lessons, we will keep on learning and how Bharat should behave and what Bharat should do. That will continue on the next Sunday in Geopolitics with Dr. Adityanjee. मगर दर्शक मित्रों, जाने से पहले एज यूजुअल प्लीज लाइक, शेयर एंड सब्सक्राइब. आप लाइक करना और कमेंट्स करना मत भूलिएगा. आप लोग देखते तो बहुत है, बट जैसे मैंने कहा कि यूट्यूब पे अभी राष्ट्रवादी चैनलों का स्लो डाउन चल रहा है और ये 4 जून तक तो डेफिनेटली चलेगा. राष्ट्रवादी कंटेंट आएगा जहां पर किसी भी तरह से सरकार की कोई भी प्रेस हो गई तो वो चैनल्स को स्लो कर दिया जाता है. आपको अच्छा लगे न लगे, आप माने न माने, ये बात सही है. और आज हम 100वां एपिसोड कर रहे हैं. आशा करते हैं कि हम जब तक 105 110 पे पहुंचेंगे तो ये सब 4 जून वाला चक्कर खत्म हो गया. And then we'll talk to Dr. Adityanjee again on next Sunday on something which is called Geopolitics of India, where I'll take up examples of our foreign minister and our prime minister, what they have said in recent 2 months and what does it suggest. We'll talk on that also. मित्रों, आज के लिए इतना ही. अगर आप हमें सपोर्ट कर सके तो डिस्क्रिप्शन में आपको सब कुछ मिल जाएगा. प्लीज, if you feel this content is useful for you and you want to feel like supporting it, please do it. I'll request Dr. Adityanjee also, our NRI friends, as many as them, please see these episodes. And at least, if nothing, please subscribe to our channel. It will help us a great deal. We are not doing badly. And let me tell you, because per episode, when you get 20-25 subscriptions as usual, which is good, but we should need to, we need to do much better in a rapid clip. Now it's a time to progress. Initial teething period is over. Yes, Dr. Adityanjee, one last word, and then we'll wrap it up 2 minutes.
मेरा आपके दर्शकों के लिए संदेश है कि कूटनीति की चर्चा की ज्ञान गंगा का ये धारा प्रवाह है. इसमें आइए और सम्मिलित होइए और भारत को महाशक्ति के रूप में उभारिए. धन्यवाद.
धन्यवाद दर्शक मित्रों. आज के लिए सिर्फ जय हिंद, जय भारत. और डॉक्टर आदित्य जी का बहुत अच्छा.